everyone in the workplace wants to feel validated. But then when you're asked, well, how do you show that? It's like people don't want a pizza party, that's not going to do it. So how do we actually do it?
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians. To overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be, visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. And don't forget, CME credit is available whenever you listen with us. Just look for CMify in the show notes to learn how. My guest today is an emergency medicine physician in the Houston, Texas area. She's made quite a name for herself as an advocate for compassionate care in the emergency department, not only for patients, but for each other as a part of the healthcare team. So, let's hear my conversation with Dr. Anita Bangale. Well, our guest today is joining me from the Houston, Texas area, Dr. Anita Bangale. Welcome to the show. It's nice to have you.
Thank you so much, Randy. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. As I mentioned in the introduction, Dr. Bangale is an emergency physician, but she has a really interesting career trajectory, and I've got a lot of things that I'm just dying to talk to you about. But as we always do, I'm very interested in how you got started. Well, first of all, are you a native Texan?
I am. I'm born and raised in Fort Worth.
Wow, we don't find that very often. So,
yeah.
And did you grow up in a medical family? Where did the influence come from that got you into medical school?
Yes. My dad is a physician. He actually had immigrated from India in 1976 and had left his position as an orthopedic resident and came here and started his practice. And at that time, he was able to begin his practice without completing a full residency here. And it was part of the diplomacy of kind of the exchange relationship of the medical degree. And so he was able to start practicing kind of an immigrant story of coming with just $6 in his pocket and kind of a rags to riches tale, mostly because of the hard work that he put in every day. And so I would see him working, and at that time I was able to kind of tag along and join him for hospital rounds. And so that was the kind of inspiration that put the seed in place.
Did he encourage you at all? Did he think medicine was a good choice for you?
Absolutely. More so because he thought it's a hobby. He never talks about medicine even till this day as something that was a chore or something that he felt forced to do from some external reason. It was very much something internal.
Yeah. And I think that probably informed some other things that we're going to talk about along your way. But you did your undergraduate study at Rice University. So I'm interested in finding out about your undergraduate education, which you picked psychology as your major. How'd you make that decision?
Well, I've always been interested in why people think a certain way, how people decide to do what they do, behaviors, motivation. And I found it just a fascinating field of study. And I think so much of medicine is about human connection. And so is kind of everyday life. So I feel like it was an all-encompassing sort of degree.
And at that point, were you ever even considering what your long-term plan would be? And what did you think maybe psychiatry perhaps, or was it just a matter of preparing yourself for medical school?
Yes, I had actually been accepted into a program where it was with Rice and with Baylor College of Medicine. And so I kind of knew that I wanted to pursue medicine. I had kind of felt that way since I was a little kid. And so I wanted to explore something that wasn't necessarily one of the hard sciences, so to speak, because I'd felt like I was going to explore enough of that during my other course of studies. And so I decided to pursue something that was kind of a little bit, I would say, off topic.
Pretty smart for a college kid. And looking back on it, are you glad you did it exactly that way?
Absolutely. I'm really glad I wouldn't change that script for anything. You know, when we kind of go in and we're not exactly sure how things are going to play out. But looking back, I'm very glad that I chose that, because things kind of come full circle, and it's only time that tells that story, or that is the witness to the story. And so looking back, if I hadn't chosen that, I don't think I'd be where I am today.
Yeah, and as I have tried to study what I can of your career by snooping around on the internet and that sort of thing, it certainly appears to me that the connection with the social sciences was very important for you. So when it came time to go to medical school, this is also very interesting to me. I find it interesting that you chose to go to one of the so-called offshore medical schools in the Netherlands Antilles. How did that decision come about?
Yeah, so I had finished my coursework a year earlier than anticipated. And so I kind of had this year in which I came back to Fort Worth and worked in an undergraduate lab, worked in a neurologist's office, and actually scribed in the emergency department. And I never would have anticipated that I would have loved working in the emergency department so much. I kind of was too much of a type A personality in terms of wanting to control things, wanting to be able to have kind of a feeling of predictability to my work, to my studies. And so I think the scribing in the emergency department allowed me to kind of relinquish a lot of that control and just be able to flow with things as they came. And so it was actually quite cathartic to be able to know that you can still handle things without going in completely prepared for something. And so I had this year off. And so at that point, I had all my undergraduate coursework completed and decided to apply to be able to start. And so I started at kind of an off time in a January semester.
I see. Yeah.
And, I did face kind of quite a bit of scrutiny at the time as to whether that was a good decision or not, whether I should take additional time to prepare for the MCAT, because at that time I had not taken the MCAT. And so, but I had a really good interview with the dean of the medical school at the time, and it just felt like the right decision. So sometimes it's kind of like an intuition. And I felt like it was just the right thing to do at that time in those circumstances. And so I started, and one of the sayings that some of my friends from medical school and I have is that Saba works. Saba is the name of the medical school. And because a lot of times, people are not sure, is this just a money-making business? Is it an enterprise that actually doesn't lead you into medicine truly? Are you not able to pursue your field of choice? And so there was a saying that we just came up with, and it was Saba works. And it truly, in fact, kind of was a bridge that, has brought me here.
Yeah. I can think of worse places to go to medical school than a Caribbean island.
Yeah. No, I know. There is just a lot of, I guess, the face of people sometimes is like, oh, wow, it must have been so glorious. But then at the other time in academic medicine, it's like, well, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Why did you have to do that? What's wrong with you?
Really? You get that question sometimes?
Oh, yeah, because there's a lot of people who perhaps choose a non-traditional path into medicine. And I think sometimes when we don't follow the exact path that society expects us to, there can be kind of feelings of doubt, or perhaps just a sense of inferiority that can develop. And so I think that, and of course, no single person is going to have an absolute traditional path. And so it's something that we just have to understand, that each piece of our story may not be what society expects it to be, but that's okay. And we can just embrace that.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians for physicians to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. Well, it certainly apparently prepared you well enough to get into a good postgraduate training program at Georgetown. And how did that decision come about? How'd you wind up in Washington?
Oh, well, I had done a lot of my 3rd and 4th year rotations in the Baltimore and New York, kind of that I-95 corridor. And so I had...
You knew the territory.
Oh, yeah. And I really loved being in that area. I knew I wanted to ultimately go back to Texas, but I really wanted to spend some time on the East Coast. And I had been told that as a foreign medical graduate that I probably wouldn't be able to pursue emergency medicine at the time. It was a pretty challenging specialty to be able to get into as a foreign medical grad. And I applied to the GW program, which was a 2 through 4 program. So the first year we had to do a separate internship. And so I had applied to the Georgetown program, which was a transitional year program, which was a pretty highly coveted program. But I remember I had a really great connection with the secretary, Tawanda Sparrow. She...
those are good connections.
If she just... I know, we just sparked this conversation, and it was just lovely. And later on, she told me, I told Dr. Hazen that she's a good one. And I feel like that is the magic that helped that happen.
It's nice to run into a little magic every now and then.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like kindness helps that magic really flourish.
And once you got into that path, did it feel exactly right? Did you think, wow, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be? Or were there any doubts along the way?
I felt the work of emergency medicine, that rush of energy and that kind of curious energy I felt when I was on shift was exactly what I was looking for. I think when I felt doubtful, and it was that the doubts were more because of my internal fears. I didn't feel confident enough to do maybe certain procedures because you're learning them in the heat of the moment of the actual trauma, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember feeling sometimes like an imposter, like, well, how am I, like, this person's life depends on me, and who am I, but it's that external support from your attendings, from your fellow residents, that fuel you to be able to feel like you can do it. But mainly it's as you start doing it, as you almost imagine yourself as the success that you want to be. And that's what helped me kind of have that doubt diminish.
Sure. And you actually stayed on in the East a little longer, out in Falls Church. Once you got into private practice, did you immediately feel like you were ready for the task, or was there still some anxiety at that point?
Well, it was nice because the year, my intern year, the Georgetown transitional year, was located primarily at Inova Fairfax. And after I finished my chief year, my first 2 years as an attending were based out of Fairfax Hospital as well. So it was a comfortable ground for me. I knew several of the hospitalists, some of the specialists, and obviously the people who worked in the emergency department from my residency days. So it felt very comfortable. But naturally, the work and the pressure that's put on as an attending is very different than even when you feel like you're all high and mighty as a resident.
Yeah. And then, was there some particular moment when you decided it was time to go back to Texas, or how did that work out?
Yeah. So I met my boyfriend at the end of fourth year of medical school, and he, who's now my husband, did his internship in Houston and then did the rest of his residency in radiology at George Washington as well. So we had spent some years apart, but then together in DC, and I decided to stay on at Fairfax because he was still finishing his residency. And then when it came time for him to do his fellowship, he was able to secure a position in Dallas. And so that's why then we moved back to Texas at the time.
And you've actually been through quite a number of different practice situations once you got back into the Houston area. You want to sort of give us the elevator summary of how that unfolded from I guess initially an employed position into the ownership position that you're in now?
Yeah, sure. So in 2013, we moved to the Woodlands, which is kind of a suburb just north of Houston. And that's where we moved to that area because my husband had secured a job with a group as a breast radiologist with his group at the time. And so we were in North Houston. I decided to join one of the hospital systems as an independent contractor, and then switch to a different group. And it was all hospital-based medicine. We had some freestandings that we worked with as well that were all part of the larger umbrella of the system. And I really enjoyed my work with St. Luke's, with Kelly Larkin's group, developed some extraordinary friendships, and worked with a wonderful team of nurses and the staff. And then after 8 years, it was around the time when COVID hit, and I felt like I really wanted to be able to create some change. I had previously served as a director in the group as well at the hospital. I had worked nights primarily for about 4 years. And so I'd kind of taken an ebb and flow approach to my work in terms of what I needed to do at home. But I decided that it was time for me to be able to make more of a critical change and leave the hospital and pursue work at a freestanding emergency department as a part owner. And so that's kind of where I am now. And it's given me a lot more autonomy in some ways than the hospital, than I had at the hospital. And but it makes me really appreciate the hospital as well in terms of certain things, like having so many systems, so many committees in place to make sure that, things are going right, you realize that you kind of share the responsibility with the whole team. Whereas here, it's, a lot of it is put on the founding partners.
I think that the concept of a freestanding emergency department is not something that's actually nationwide. It was a bit of a new concept for me. Tell us some more about that.
Yeah. So we see about, it's called America's ER, and we see about, during the peak of the pandemic, we were seeing upwards of 85 patients a day, so in 24 hours. And we were able to take care of anything and everything that comes through the emergency department. We're able to keep people for up to 23 hours for observation. So, for example, if someone comes in with a really bad asthma attack, instead of having to keep them or transfer them to the hospital, we're able to keep them, give them treatment over time, and then be able to talk to someone that they can follow up with outpatient, but stabilize them and treat them. But obviously, we're not able to perform things like surgery for appendicitis. So we're able to diagnose, stabilize, and then transfer to one of the hospitals. So it's kind of, and it's interesting because during COVID, we had a lot of patients that sought out care in our freestandings. You would think that they needed to be in the hospital because they were ICU level patients, but there was such a fear that had developed for people that they really felt comfortable. It was almost like we were their neighborhood ER. We had a lot of repeat customers, a lot of patients that would come in, bring their families just because they had such a great experience. Felt like I was able to really connect with people, communicate with patients and their families in a way that you can in a hospital setting, but there's a lot more challenges in the hospital setting.
It sounds like the lion's share of the patients that visit a facility such as this are the ones that walk through the door on their own. Do you actually have any patients that are delivered by ambulance, by emergency transport vehicles?
Yeah, so it's interesting because most freestanding emergency departments, I would say, don't get ambulance traffic. Our America's ER, we actually have two branches, two locations, one in Cypress and one in the back of the Woodlands or Magnolia, actually receive ambulance traffic because they're considered or designated as level 1 freestandings. And so there's a great relationship between the emergency medical transport systems and our leadership. And so we're able to secure some, or be able to kind of help take the burden off of some of the traffic that was going to the emergency departments, especially during the pandemic.
And is this something that is unique to Texas, or do they do it in other states? I'm familiar with the so-called walk-in medical clinics, the doc in a box, if you will. But this sounds entirely different. Is it something that's unique to Texas?
I do think that it's unique to Texas and a handful of other states. I believe Colorado is one of the other states as well. I know Virginia had freestanding emergency departments, but I believe they were all hospital based, they were under the larger umbrella of the hospital system. And that's my knowledge, but I don't know exactly all the details.
I see. Well, one of the things that particularly got me interested in you and made us want to get you on this program was a TEDx talk that you did about reimagining your career. And I think we'll probably want to tell our audience where to find that. But if you could give us a little summary of what that talk was all about reimagining your career.
Yeah, so actually 2 years ago, I decided to pursue a certification in life coaching. I was seeing so many of my colleagues in the emergency department feeling the burden of hospital-based medical practice when it comes to Press Ganey scores or just metrics in general, and feeling like their sense of validation was coming from something as external as data points. And I know so many other healthcare workers like staff, techs, where they were feeling this burden as well. And I realized that there was a huge sense of burnout that was developing even 2 years ago. And I decided to pursue my coaching certification more so because you saw the stress of kind of the modern work, like the methods of work, really eating away at people's sense of joy. And this kind of made me think back to so many of the things I had learned in undergrad during so many of my psychology courses, especially motivation and the ways that we feel our sense of validation. Like everyone in the workplace wants to feel validated, but then when you're asked, well, how do you show that? It's like people don't want a pizza party, that's not going to do it. So how do we actually do it? So I that was basically what my talk was on, is how do we feel this connection with each other? And especially in the setting of the pandemic, when the strain of PPE was straining the relationship between the doctor and the patient, or the doctor and the nurse, and all these systems were kind of in cahoots. How do we still maintain that sense of who we are, a sense of authenticity and connection, despite all of these challenges? And that's kind of the essence of what my talk was on.
And you actually talked a great deal about how the challenge of being able to work with terribly sick patients with the barrier, the physical barrier of the personal protective equipment, the PPE, was a very tangible thing that was easy to recognize as a barrier between you and the patient. But you also went into the reality of how we get graded as physicians that don't have anything to do with our knowledgeability about the pathophysiology of disease and treatment. It has more to do with patient satisfaction scores. And you had a great deal to say about how that has become a bit of a demoralizing force amongst physicians and other healthcare workers as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I mean, I remember these, these Press Ganey scores, they just affected so much of how our physician meetings went, right? Everyone rolled their eyes when the directors would talk about Press Ganey scores, because essentially people were trying to do the right thing. They were trying to communicate in an effective way. People go into medicine, especially emergency medicine, because they like connecting and meeting people. They like to establish good rapport in a quick period of time. So no one is going into medicine, especially emergency medicine, to be mean to people. Most of us are just feeling like they're treating their neighbor. And so, but yet these hospital systems have created these graphing systems, this way of collecting data. And I do think there was an intention of trying to really help the situation, because I know that patients feel that they can't connect with the doctors, and sometimes doctors feel like there's so many barriers to that connection. So I do think that the original intention was a good one. Yet what's happened is that data driven system has actually created even more of a barrier from bridging this sense of communication. And I think that, for example, patients are asked, well, were you provided a blanket? I mean, I think that if someone is offered a blanket, that's a great thing. But should the physician's quality of care and treatment be based on that? I mean, I think many people would tend to agree that it shouldn't be based on that. Or I think that sometimes there's a sense that your care in the emergency department is so much service-based, but really people just want to hear that their physician is taking the time to understand and listen. And that's all the physician wants to do too. But these data-driven tactics are preventing so much time from being focused on the actual communication with the patient. And I'm not just saying this because this is what I think. This is what so much of the literature shows. This is what so many of the anecdotes when you talk to both nurses and physicians, this is what people are thinking and feeling.
I may be a little bit of a cynic. In fact, I am a bit of a cynic. And I wonder if you're being a little generous in saying that these type of patient satisfaction metrics were well intended. My impression is that those metrics are intended to determine who's more likely to come back to your hospital or your healthcare facility, because those are indicators of revenue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't see where there is any indication of an evaluation of the quality of medical care that's being delivered in any of those Press Ganey scores. So you tell me, am I being too cynical, or is that kind of what it's all about?
I mean, I think at the core, you're right. It's a business model, and the goal of the business is to create profits. And this is a technique in which we can see how, you're right, how many people are going to come back. And I think that burden of responsibility is placed on the physician. And I understand why we want to provide that quality of care. And that's where I'm saying, like, the reason I say that the whole point was to try and create a connection through this data is like, yeah, the physician wants to treat the patient. The patient wants to receive good care. The hospital or the medical practice wants to generate a profit. Like, all of that is in agreement,
Mm-hmm.
But somehow this system has created a completely fractured mindset where people are not at the table together. But I think
Yeah.
if people can think about it as, hey, this is a way where we're all speaking the same language, but the method in which it's done is that, okay, we're going to look at this pattern of numbers, and then we're going to completely demonize the people in the lower quartile, and make physicians, videotape them, see how they're actually talking to patients, make them sit in a room and analyze their performance. I mean, I just think it's very interesting that this happens across so many institutions and practices.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So at some point during your TED Talk, it seemed to me that you were telling us that COVID sort of gave us an opportunity to re-examine ourselves, a wake-up call, if you will, because it puts so many barriers between the physician and the patient, and maybe shined a light on some barriers that were always there that we were not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think would happen if COVID vanished? Have we learned enough from it that we actually are likely to do better now, or have we learned nothing at all?
I think we've definitely learned a lot. I think that we've learned that there's so much of a psychology of how we treat people as opposed to just the medicine. Like, the art of medicine is the art because it's the art of how we communicate with people, how to abate some of the fears that they're coming in with, that it's not always just medical. And I think that COVID really shined a light on that, and that the way that we can communicate with people sometimes means less testing. I mean, I think now people understand that, hey, you don't necessarily need antibiotics for a virus. People are more aware of that. Of course, we had that with flu. Of course, that we had that with seasonal viruses. But I think it's kind of, the public knows a great deal more about, sometimes you don't have to necessarily seek care for something that you can manage at home. But when people are coming in, sometimes it's not just for the medical reason. It's like, hey, well, what is really going on here? Like, what are you scared about? Why are you in the emergency department? And sometimes they just need a few minutes of talking and not necessarily a whole slew of tests. So I think that sense of communication is what COVID has actually taught me. And it's changed the way I practice.
You've also got some experience with telemedicine.
Mm-hmm.
that is a venue in which you have no other method of interacting with the patient other than having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested if in some strange way you actually found that to be more rewarding rather than spending your day in an emergency room feeling as though you were working under a timer, as it were.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love the adrenaline, the rush of being in the emergency department, but I enjoy telemedicine aspects as well. I mean, I work with a company called Brightside Health, and it's been about 4 years, a little over 4 years, where I've been working with patients that have primarily depression and anxiety, and work to help treat some of their symptoms. And that's kind of what even prompted me to go into the life coaching side of my work, as well as because I was talking to so many people between the ages of 18 and 40 who did have real symptoms of anxiety and depression. But in talking to them, I think so many of these symptoms had developed because of the social pressures that they were feeling, whether it was from social media, whether it was from a sense of feeling like they had to be something because of the demands that society was putting on them, and not necessarily because they had a real, like, some major trigger in their life. It was all these micro triggers, I would say, that had developed over many years. And so as we started talking about it, I realized that many of these people didn't necessarily need medication or pharmaceutical treatment. They needed more of social prescription of, hey, let's tap back into what is your passion? What do you like to do? Who are you connecting with? Who are you actually having a conversation with in real life as opposed to a text conversation with? When is the last time you called and talked to a friend on the phone? These types of things, or went to a dance class and or exercised. And as we started focusing on that little small gains every day, a lot of times these people did not necessarily need to be on medication beyond a few months. And so that kind of made me realize that so much can be accomplished, not like just seeing someone through the computer, just if you're willing to listen.
Attention healthcare professionals. Have you lost control of your career? Do you feel like you need to hit the reset button? If you're tired of uncertainty, struggling to find balance in your career, frustrated with pay cuts, extended shifts, or insurance aggravation, well then, it's time for you to change your life and carve out the career of your dreams. Join Dr. Jarrett Patton and others at Licensed to Live, the conference, July 8 through 10, 2022, live from the Bellevue in Philadelphia. Explore the vast possibilities available to you as a physician or healthcare executive and ignite your career into the life you desire. Hear from expert healthcare professionals as they offer actionable, dynamic, and inspirational information, and get ready to leave inspired, ready to create the career you love, licensed to live. It's time for you to be happy. And as an added benefit, all attendees become subscribers to receive the print copy of Physician Outlook magazine. For early bird reservations, go to rxforsuccesspodcast.com/live. Anita, this has been a lot of fun talking to you, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us. But we're at the point in the program now where I want to step out of the way and give the floor to you. So I'm going to close my mic, and Dr. Anita Bangale is going to give her prescriptions for success.
Thank you so much, Randy. Well, for my general thoughts on my prescriptions for success, I have four main points. The first is, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. I think so many times those of us in medicine, especially moms in medicine, feel this burden of having to do everything for everyone at the same time. And I think once we release that pressure, it actually allows things to fall in place. If you have to have someone help pick up your kids from school, if you have to have someone help with cleaning, if you have to lean on your partner more than you anticipated, all of these things are okay. And even professionally, if you have to ask for changes in your work schedule or trade shifts, all of that is okay. But the more that you open up and ask for help, the more you're going to allow someone else to be able to do the same. And it's going to bring about a much more joyful work situation and family situation. The second thing I would say is that the bumps in the road, the challenges, are what don't ever shy away from sharing those stories, because most of the times the challenges that we face are something similar to what other people experience. It's kind of like the way that we hear about the butterfly in the cocoon. If we actually cut the cocoon open, the butterfly dies and is never released. But it's that struggle of that butterfly trying to emerge through the cocoon that actually fills its wings with blood, and it's what allows it to fly eventually. So that struggle, the challenge of what we're facing, is a necessary part of what we need for success in the future, because we look on that. Those are the opportunities and the times that we develop the tools that we need to succeed in the future. So share the story, because most likely someone, even if they haven't experienced that specific struggle, they're going to experience something similar and probably can learn and benefit from your lesson. The third thing I would say is that a small conversation, just a few minutes of talking, is actually one of the best prescriptions in life. That conversation, that connection is the key to be able to feel a connection with someone and develop that happiness down the road. So if you're feeling any type of frustration, resentment, anger, it's okay to actually open up and have a conversation. So many times we feel like we cannot have this, express these feelings, or that the emotions, we have to bury them. But if we acknowledge it, label it, and actually have the conversation with someone about it, it actually helps us release it and move on. And the last thing I would say is release that sense of perfectionism. Nobody is perfect, and whatever mistakes have been made, you embrace it and allow it to be part of your character. And it's that imperfect perfection that in each of us that allows us to be authentic and makes each of us so special. And I guess 5, the last thing I would say is never be afraid to just hop on a plane. Every flight that I've decided to spontaneously get on leads to so much more adventure. I'm not a fashionista. I am not anything, but one place where I will splurge is on travel. And those are my 5 prescriptions for success.
And thank you so much for sharing with us, Anita. It's been a lot of fun talking with you today, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you. I've been fascinated by the TEDx talk that I saw, and I encourage our audience to look that up and take advantage of it. It's really quite spellbinding. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our audience where they can find more about you and find you in particular, if you'll go ahead and share.
Yeah, definitely. So I do have my own coaching business called Diya Coaching. Diya in Sanskrit means light, and I fundamentally believe that if we can share each other's internal light with the world, then we can kind of evade all the darkness. And so my coaching is basically online or in person for those who live close by, but you can find more about it at www.anitabangale.com. That's ANITABANGALE.com. There's a lot of information there. I work with families. I work with healthcare professionals. I work with high school students and young professionals, and to kind of empower high achieving people to be able to embrace that unique X factor that makes them them. And I love to guide motivated students and do small group sessions as well, online and in person. So you're welcome to find me there or on Instagram. My handle is Diya Coaching, DIYA Coaching. People are welcome to contact me online or over email. My email address is abangale@gmail.com, and I'm always happy to speak for different medical school groups or pre-med interest groups. My passion is to work with the younger, motivated students to be able to help them be who they want to be.
Well, Dr. Anita Bangale, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you today, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Randy. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. We'd really appreciate a review from you, and a 5-star rating helps us a lot. These ratings give our podcast much more visibility, and that helps us reach more listeners. Exclusive content is available on our Patreon page, including membership-only material like personal rapid-fire Q&A sessions with our guests. To be sure you never miss an episode, visit our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com to subscribe, and while you're there, learn how to get CME credit from CMFI just by listening. Special thanks to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.